An obese 16-year-old girl is sold to a Hell's Angel by her own father. He calls it punishment. But for her, it feels like the end of her life. Terrified, she expects cruelty. Yet the man who bought her doesn't hurt her. Instead, he gives her food, a blanket, and a place to sleep. He says he paid to save her, not to own her. But the town doesn't believe him. They whisper, they judge. And when the truth finally comes out, everyone's world will be turned upside down. Because the man they call a monster may be the only one with a soul left to save. As dark secrets rise, she must find the courage to tell the world what really happened and prove that love can come from the unlikeliest heart. Will she risk everything to protect the man who rescued her? Or lose the only person who ever saw her worth? What if the man you feared most was the one sent to save you? Drop a comment below and share which part of the world you're tuning in from today. If you enjoy stories like this, don't forget to subscribe for more. The rain pelted against the windows of the small kitchen, each drop echoing Lila Brooks' quiet sniffles as she swept the worn linoleum floor. Her movements were careful, methodical, a rhythm she'd developed over years of trying to stay invisible in her own home. The ancient broom made soft scratching sounds against the floor, a familiar comfort in the growing storm outside. Thunder rumbled in the distance, and Lila's hands tightened on the broom handle. The kitchen clock ticked past 6 o'clock in the evening, and her stomach knotted with dread. Her father would be home soon, and lately, his moods had been darker than the storm clouds gathering overhead. As if summoned by her fears, the front door crashed open. Earl Brooks stumbled in, bringing with him the sharp smell of gasoline from the factory and the sour stench of whiskey. Water dripped from his work clothes onto the floor she'd just swept, but Lila knew better than to mention it. "You!" Earl's bloodshot eyes fixed on her. "Still standing around doing nothing? As usual?" His words slurred together, making Lila shrink back against the counter. I was just finishing the kitchen, Dad," she whispered, clutching the broom like a shield. Earl's laugh was harsh, bitter. "Finishing? Like you finish everything else? Half done, just taking up space?" He kicked an empty beer can across the floor. "Got fired today. Budget cuts, they said. But I know better. They've been looking for reasons." Lila's heart sank. Things had been bad before, but without his job. She unconsciously reached for her mother's locket, the only thing she had left of her hanging around her neck. "Bills keep coming," Earl continued, pacing the small kitchen like a caged animal. "Rent's due, and what do I have? A useless weight around my neck, eating food we can't afford, taking up space we can't pay for." A crack of thunder made Lila jump, but her father didn't even seem to notice. His eyes had taken on that dangerous gleam she'd learned to fear. "But I found a solution today," he said, his voice dropping to an unsettling calm. "Met someone at the bar. That ex-biker, Rex Dalton, lives out on the old Murphy property." Earl's lips twisted into a cruel smile. "He's got money, and he's willing to pay." Confusion turned to horror as understanding dawned on Lila's face. "Dad, no. Please." The broom clattered to the floor as she backed away, her hands shaking as they gripped her mother's locket. "Already done," Earl spat. "He's waiting outside. Time to earn your keep for once." Lila's pleas turned to sobs as Earl grabbed her arm, his fingers digging in painfully as he dragged her toward the door. The rain hit her face like tiny needles as they stepped outside, and there, illuminated by a flash of lightning, sat a massive figure on a gleaming Harley-Davidson. Rex Dalton was everything Lila's worst nightmares were made of. Broad-shouldered and muscled, covered in tattoos that snaked up his arms and disappeared under his leather vest. But when he turned to look at her, his eyes weren't what she expected. They were calm, steady, with something in them that looked almost like sadness. Earl's grip tightened as Rex reached into his jacket and pulled out a thick envelope. The exchange was quick, money for human life. And before Lila could process what was happening, her father had snatched the cash and was heading back to the house. "Dad!" she screamed, her voice breaking. "Please don't leave me!" But Earl Brooks didn't look back. The door slammed shut with finality, leaving Lila standing in the rain beside a stranger who had just bought her. The motorcycle's engine rumbled like distant thunder. Rex Dalton hadn't moved, hadn't spoken, just sat there watching her with those unnervingly calm eyes. When he finally spoke, his voice was low and gentle, nothing like what she'd expected. "You're safe now, kid," he said quietly, almost too soft to hear over the rain. "I didn't buy you to hurt you." Lila stood frozen, rain soaking through her thin t-shirt, her arms wrapped tightly around herself. She flinched when Rex moved, but he was only shrugging off his leather jacket. He held it out to her, and in that moment, she saw something in his face, not pity, but understanding. "You'll catch your death in this rain," he said, still holding out the jacket. "Take it, please." Her hands trembled as she accepted the jacket. It was warm from his body heat and smelled of leather and motor oil. As she slipped it on, the sleeves fell well past her hands, but it sheltered her from the rain. Rex gestured to the seat behind him. "We need to get out of this weather. Can you trust me enough to climb on?" Lila looked back at the house one last time, at the dark windows where her father was probably already counting his blood money. She touched her mother's locket, drawing strength from it, then carefully climbed onto the motorcycle behind Rex. "Hold on tight," he instructed, and she tentatively wrapped her arms around his waist as the Harley roared to life. As they pulled away from the only home she'd ever known, Lila's tears mixed with the rain on her face. The night swallowed them up, the motorcycle's headlight cutting through the darkness like a blade of hope in the storm. She didn't know where they were going, but somehow, despite everything, she felt safer than she had in years. The rain continued to fall, washing away the tracks of the motorcycle as it carried them into the unknown, leaving behind a house that had long since ceased to be a home, and a father who had finally revealed the true depth of his betrayal. Thunder rolled overhead, nature's fury echoing the turmoil in Lila's heart as she clung to a stranger who had bought her freedom with cash, yet promised her safety with his eyes. The motorcycle's engine thundered through the darkness as Rex guided them along winding roads that snaked through dense pine forests. Lila's fingers clutched desperately at his leather vest, her body trembling from both cold and fear, despite the heavy jacket he'd given her. The rain had settled into a gentle mist, but the night air bit through her damp clothes. Through gaps in the trees, she caught glimpses of a half-moon floating among tattered clouds. The bike's headlight carved a lonely path through the darkness, illuminating the occasional reflective eyes of woodland creatures that quickly vanished into the shadows. Every curve in the road made her grip tighter, her heart racing with uncertainty about where this strange man was taking her. The sound of the engine masked her quiet sobs, but Rex seemed to sense her distress. He kept the bike at a steady pace, taking the turns with careful consideration. When they hit patches of wet leaves, he slowed even more, making sure they stayed upright and safe. Time seemed to lose meaning as they rode through the night. The trees grew thicker, the road narrower. Just when Lila thought they must be heading to the ends of the earth, the bike began to slow. They turned onto a gravel driveway that wound through towering evergreens, their branches reaching overhead like protective arms. The first hints of dawn were beginning to paint the sky in pale grays when a cabin emerged from the darkness. It was modest but well-maintained, with a wide front porch and windows that reflected the approaching morning. A stack of neatly split firewood lined one wall, and wind chimes tinkled softly in the breeze. Rex cut the engine, and the sudden silence felt heavy. "Home sweet home," he said quietly, helping Lila dismount on shaky legs. She stood uncertainly, hugging his jacket around herself as he wheeled the bike under a small shelter. The cabin's porch light clicked on automatically as they approached, illuminating hanging baskets of ferns and a comfortable-looking porch swing. Rex fished out his keys and opened the door, stepping aside to let Lila enter first. The show interior was clean and surprisingly cozy, but Lila's breath caught in her throat when she saw the walls. Framed photographs covered nearly every surface. Bikers in leather vests, motorcycles gleaming in the sun, groups of rough-looking men with patches that read "Hell's Angels." Her fear, which had begun to subside, flared anew. Rex must have noticed her reaction. "That was another life," he said softly, moving past her to turn on more lights. "Let me get you a towel and something warm to eat. You're shivering." He disappeared down a hallway, returning moments later with a thick, fluffy towel. "Bathroom's second door on the right if you want to dry off properly. I'll heat up some soup." Lila stood frozen for a moment, clutching the towel. The bathroom was small but spotlessly clean, with a shell-shaped soap dish and sea-themed shower curtain that seemed oddly gentle for a former biker. She dried her hair and face, studying her reflection in the mirror. Her eyes were red from crying, her cheeks pale with exhaustion and fear. When she emerged, the smell of chicken soup filled the air. Rex had set 2 bowls on a small kitchen table, along with crackers and glasses of water. He gestured for her to sit, but didn't crowd her, giving her space to move at her own pace. The soup was warm and comforting, and despite her anxiety, Lila found herself hungry. They ate in silence until she finally gathered the courage to ask the question that had been burning in her mind. "Why did you buy me?" Her voice was barely above a whisper. Rex set down his spoon, his face shadowed with something that looked like old pain. "I had a daughter once," he said after a long moment. "Her name was Sarah. She got mixed up with the wrong people, started using drugs. By the time I figured out how bad it was..." He stopped, his hands tightening around his water glass. "She overdosed 6 years ago. She was 17. He looked directly at Lila, his eyes intense but gentle. "When I saw you tonight, saw the fear in your eyes, I saw Sarah, and I knew what kind of people your father might sell you to next time he needed money. I couldn't let that happen. Not again." Lila absorbed this, her fingers absently touching her mother's locket. The sincerity in his voice was unmistakable, but years of disappointment and betrayal had taught her to be cautious with trust. "There's a spare bedroom," Rex continued, standing to clear their bowls. "Clean sheets on the bed, locks on the inside of the door. Use it if it makes you feel safer. Bathroom's all yours too. I sleep down here on the couch." He showed her to a small but comfortable bedroom, decorated in soft blues and grays. A handmade quilt covered the bed, and curtains stirred gently in the breeze from a slightly open window. The door had a solid deadbolt, just as he'd said. "Try to get some rest," Rex said, stepping back. "We can figure out next steps tomorrow." Later, as Lila lay in the unfamiliar bed, she heard soft sounds from downstairs. Curious, she crept to the top of the stairs and heard Rex's low voice. "Lord, watch over that girl's soul. She's been through enough. Help me do right by her. Show her there's still good in this world. Don't let me fail this one like I failed Sarah." The raw emotion in his prayer caught her off guard. Lila returned to bed, pulling the quilt up to her chin as she stared at the ceiling. The night's events swirled in her mind like autumn leaves in a wind. Her father's betrayal, the terrifying ride through darkness, and now this strange man who spoke to God about saving her soul. She didn't trust him. Not completely. But something about his quiet strength, his careful consideration of her fear, and the pain in his voice when he spoke of his daughter made her wonder if perhaps, against all odds, she had found not a captor, but a rescuer. The wind chimes sang softly outside her window, a gentle counterpoint to the thoughts tumbling through her mind. Dawn was breaking fully now, painting the room in soft golden light. Lila lay awake, listening to the occasional creak of floorboards downstairs, trying to make sense of how her world had turned upside down in a single night. Morning sunlight filtered through the thin curtains, casting dancing shadows on Lila's face. Her eyes fluttered open, momentarily confused by the unfamiliar surroundings. The events of the previous night crashed back like waves, her father's rage, the motorcycle ride, the strange cabin. But something else caught her attention now. The rich aroma of bacon drifting up from downstairs, mingled with the bitter scent of fresh coffee. From somewhere below, Merle Haggard's voice crooned softly from an old radio, the kind her grandmother used to keep in her kitchen. The familiar sound was oddly comforting in this strange place. Lila slipped out of bed, still wearing yesterday's clothes. She'd been too scared to change into the pajamas Rex had left outside her door. Moving cautiously to the window, she saw fresh wood chips scattered near a chopping block, the morning dew still glistening on them. Rex must have been up early. She crept downstairs, each step careful and quiet. Rex stood at the stove, his back to her, spatula in hand. He wore a faded denim shirt with the sleeves rolled up, revealing tattoos that seemed less frightening in the morning light. "Morning," he said without turning around. "Coffee's fresh if you drink it. Got juice too." Lila hesitated in the doorway. "Thank you," she managed, her voice barely above a whisper. "Sit anywhere," Rex gestured to the small kitchen table. "Bacon's almost done. Got some eggs too if you're hungry." She slid into a chair, watching as he moved around the kitchen with surprising ease for such a large man. When he set a plate in front of her, loaded with scrambled eggs and crispy bacon, she stared at it, her hands twisting in her lap. Rex noticed her hesitation. "Something wrong with the food?" "No, I just—" Lila swallowed. Hard. "I shouldn't eat so much." Rex paused in the act of pouring coffee. "Says who?" "My dad," she started, then stopped. "He said I was already too fat, that nobody would ever—" Her voice cracked, and she looked away, shame burning in her cheeks. Rex set the coffee pot down with deliberate care. "Your father," he said slowly, "was wrong about a lot of things. You're not what he said you are." The simple statement hung in the air between them. Lila blinked rapidly, fighting back tears as she picked up her fork. After breakfast, she insisted on helping with the dishes. They worked in comfortable silence, Rex washing, Lila drying. The radio played softly in the background, filling the space between them with gentle country melodies. As the morning stretched into afternoon, Lila began to explore the cabin more fully. It was modest but well-maintained, with worn but clean furniture and faded family photos on the walls. She noticed Rex had turned several of them face down, but caught glimpses of a younger, smiling girl in the ones still visible. The back porch wrapped around two sides of the cabin, offering views of the surrounding forest. In one corner, partially hidden under an old tarp, she discovered a guitar. It was dusty but seemed intact, its wood warm and smooth under her fingers. Without thinking, she sat down cross-legged and pulled it into her lap. Her mother had taught her a few chords before she died, and her fingers found them now, muscle memory taking over. She began to pick out a simple melody, one of the first songs she'd learned. A floorboard creaked behind her. Rex stood in the doorway, his face unreadable. Lila's fingers stilled on the strings. "I'm sorry," she said quickly. "I shouldn't have touched it without asking." "No, it's okay." His voice was rough. "That song, Sarah used to play it. She loved that old guitar." Lila saw tears gathering in his eyes before he turned away, covering the moment with a half smile. "You keep playing if you want. Sounds nice." The rest of the day passed quietly. Rex worked in his small workshop behind the cabin while Lila sat on the porch, alternating between watching the forest and carefully practicing on the guitar. The familiar activity helped calm her nerves, gave her something to focus on besides her fear and uncertainty. As evening approached, Rex made a simple dinner of spaghetti and garlic bread. They ate together at the kitchen table, the silence between them no longer quite so awkward. The radio had been turned off, leaving only the sounds of crickets and distant owls filtering through the screened windows. After helping clean up, Lila retreated to her room. She found a notepad and pen in the bedside table drawer and, after several false starts, wrote a simple message. "Thank you for not being cruel. Lila." She crept back downstairs and left the note propped against the coffee pot where Rex would find it in the morning. Then she returned to her room, locked the door out of habit rather than fear, and crawled into bed. The day's events played through her mind as she drifted off. The smell of bacon and coffee, the feel of the guitar strings under her fingers, the way Rex had given her space while somehow letting her know she wasn't alone. It wasn't home, but for the first time in years, she felt something close to safe. The morning sun painted golden stripes across Lila's bed through the half-closed blinds. 2 days had passed since she'd first arrived at Rex's cabin, and an unfamiliar feeling had settled over her. Peace. She sat cross-legged on her bed, running her fingers over the smooth wood of the guitar Rex had let her keep in her room. The house smelled like coffee and pine, a combination that had become oddly comforting. Through her window, she could see Rex in his workshop, methodically sanding what looked like a wooden chair. His careful, steady movements reminded her of the way he approached everything, with patience and quiet attention. These past 48 hours had shown her a different kind of life. No walking on eggshells, no cruel words cutting through the air. Rex didn't say much, but when he did speak, his words were kind or useful, never meant to wound. Lila had just started picking out a simple melody on the guitar when a sharp knock at the front door shattered the morning quiet. The sound was official, demanding. Nothing like Rex's gentle taps when he called her for meals. Her heart jumped into her throat as she heard heavy footsteps on the porch. Through her partially open door, she caught fragments of conversation that made her blood run cold. "Sheriff Dwyer, what brings you out here?" Rex's voice was calm, but careful. "Got a serious complaint, Dalton. Mr. Brooks here says you took his daughter." Lila's fingers went numb. She recognized the second voice immediately, her father. The guitar slipped from her grasp, making a hollow thunk on the bed. "That's not what happened." Rex's voice remained steady. "Earl Brooks sold his daughter to me, handed her over for cash, right in his own driveway." "That's a lie!" Earl's voice cracked with false outrage. "I've been searching everywhere for her. This ex-con kidnapped my little girl." Lila's legs shook as she made her way downstairs. She found Rex standing in the doorway, his broad shoulders blocking most of the view. Beyond him stood Sheriff Dwyer, his badge catching the morning light, and Earl, her father swaying slightly, his face red with what she knew wasn't genuine concern. "Lila," Earl pushed forward, reaching for her. "Baby, are you okay? Did he hurt you?" She flinched away from his grasping hands, backing toward Rex. "He didn't hurt me," she said, her voice small but clear. "You sold me to him. You were drunk and angry about losing your job. See what he's done?" Earl turned to the sheriff, his voice dripping with manufactured grief. "He's brainwashed her. My own daughter turned against me. I'm her father. I would never sell her." Sheriff Dwyer's hand rested on his belt, near his gun. "Miss Brooks, why don't you come with me? We've got child services waiting in town. They'll sort this all out." "No, please," Lila begged, looking up at Rex. "He's telling the truth. My father sold me. Rex saved me." But she could see in the sheriff's eyes that her words meant nothing. To him, Rex was still just an ex-Hell's Angel with a record, and Earl was a grieving father who'd lost his wife and now his daughter. A woman in a gray suit appeared on the porch, the child services worker. "Come on, honey," she said softly. "We need to get you somewhere safe while we figure this out." Lila felt tears streaming down her face as the woman gently but firmly led her toward a government car parked in the gravel driveway. Rain had started to fall, just like the night she'd first met Rex, fat drops painting dark spots on the dust-covered vehicle. As they helped her into the back seat, she turned to look at Rex one last time. He stood in the doorway, his face a mask of contained pain. She pressed her palm against the cool window glass, mouthing the words, "Thank you," as the car began to move. Through the rear window, she watched him grow smaller until he knelt beside the wooden cross that marked his daughter's memory. Even through the rain and distance, she could read his lips as he whispered, "I won't stop caring, kid." Lila's hand found her mother's locket, clutching it like a lifeline as they drove toward town. In the rearview mirror, the cabin's porch light became just another fading star in a sea of blue and red emergency lights. She closed her eyes, trying to hold on to the memory of peace she'd found in those brief 2 days. The smell of coffee and pine, the feel of guitar strings under her fingers, and the quiet kindness of a man who had tried to save her. The rain fell harder now, drumming against the car roof like her father's angry fists used to pound on her bedroom door. But this time, instead of cowering, she held tight to her locket and the truth she now knew, that somewhere in this world there were still people who could be trusted, who saw her worth beyond her father's cruel words. As they turned onto the main road, the flashing lights finally disappeared behind the thick curtain of pine trees. Lila watched them fade, knowing that even though she was being taken away, something had changed inside her. In just 2 days, Rex had shown her what it felt like to be treated with dignity. That knowledge, at least, couldn't be taken away. The foster home loomed before Lila like a gray prison, its peeling paint and sagging gutters matching the heaviness in her heart. Mrs. Peterson, the main caretaker, barely looked up from her phone as she showed Lila to a cramped room with 3 beds. "You'll share with Tara and Jenny," Mrs. Peterson said flatly. "Dinner's at 6. Don't be late." The room smelled of cheap perfume and forgotten dreams. 2 beds were already claimed, covered in bright magazines and scattered makeup. Lila set her small bag on the remaining bed, its thin mattress squeaking under even that slight weight. "Well, look what we got here," a sharp voice cut through the air. 2 girls stood in the doorway, one tall and blonde, the other shorter with dark hair streaked purple. "I'm Tara," the blonde one said, looking Lila up and down with a smirk. "This is Jenny. Heard you're the girl whose daddy sold her to some biker." Lila's cheeks burned. She turned away, busying herself with unpacking her few belongings. "Can't blame him," Jenny snickered. Probably got a good price, considering there's so much of you to sell." Tears pricked at Lila's eyes, but she refused to let them fall. She'd learned long ago that crying only made the cruel ones stronger. Days blended into weeks. Lila developed a routine of invisibility, eating quickly at meals, staying late at school to avoid the other girls, finding quiet corners where she could write in her journal. The pages filled with lyrics born from her pain and hope, words she couldn't speak aloud finding their way onto paper. At Jefferson High School, whispers followed her through the hallways. "That's her, the girl who got sold. I heard he was a drug dealer. No, he was worse, a gang member." The truth was too complicated to explain, and no one really wanted to hear it anyway. How could she make them understand that Rex had been her salvation, not her captor? One rainy Tuesday afternoon, Lila discovered the abandoned music room on the 3rd floor. Dust covered the old piano and stack of chairs, but in the corner sat something wonderful, a tablet computer, forgotten in the school's technology upgrade. It still worked, and better yet, it had a basic recording app. Lila's heart raced as she closed the door softly behind her. Her fingers trembled as she opened her journal to a song she'd been working on. The words had come to her late one night, thinking about the difference between her father's cruel transaction and Rex's genuine care. Sold in darkness, bought with light one man's trash, another's sight you saw past the broken parts, bought with love, not hate, to give my soul a safer place. Her voice started shakily, but grew stronger as she sang, the empty room's natural acoustics wrapping around her words like a warm embrace. She recorded 3 takes before she was satisfied, her heart pounding each time she pressed the button, afraid someone might discover her sanctuary. Meanwhile, across town, Rex Dalton walked the streets with a purpose. His leather jacket was worn now, softened by time and worry. In his hands, he held a stack of bright yellow flyers advertising a youth outreach program at his church. "Safe haven for troubled teens," they proclaimed in bold letters. He posted them carefully, at the library, the coffee shop, anywhere Lila might see them. His eyes scanned each passing face, hoping to catch a glimpse of her. The town wasn't large, but it felt endless when you were searching for someone you couldn't reach. Each night, he returned to his cabin alone, the silence broken only by the soft whir of an old CD player. He would sit in his daughter's untouched room, playing the recording of her voice, a school talent show performance from years ago. "I'm sorry, Sarah," he would whisper to the empty air. "I couldn't save you, but maybe I can still help her." Back at the foster home, Lila waited until the house grew quiet. Jenny and Tara had gone to a party, and Mrs. Peterson was absorbed in her evening television shows. In the dim light of her bed lamp, Lila opened the tablet she'd borrowed from school. Her hands shook as she created an anonymous account on a music-sharing platform. The upload seemed to take forever. She had titled the song simply "Bought for Love" and listed the artist as "Nobody Important." As the progress bar finally reached 100%, Lila pressed her face into her pillow and whispered, "Please, let someone hear me." She thought about Rex, wondering if he ever thought of her, if he understood how those few days of kindness had given her something to hold on to in this new darkness. In the distance, a train whistle echoed through the night, long and lonely, like a prayer seeking its answer. Her mother's locket lay cool against her chest, and inside it now was something new, a small scrap of paper with the words Rex had said to her that first night. "You're safe now, kid." Even if it wasn't true anymore, the memory of those words helped her believe that somewhere, someone cared enough to try to save her. The tablet's screen glowed softly in the darkness as her song began its journey into the vast digital wilderness. One view, 2 views. Each number represented someone out there in the world who might understand, might hear the truth behind the melody, that sometimes being bought could mean being saved. 3 days after Lila uploaded her song, Mrs. Henderson, the English teacher, was grading papers in the faculty lounge when the haunting melody drifted from her phone. Her colleague had shared a link saying, "You need to hear this." The pure, raw emotion in the young voice made her pause, pen hovering over an essay. "Listen to this," she called to the other teachers. Soon, a small crowd gathered around her desk, entranced by the simple recording. The lyrics spoke of being sold, of finding unexpected kindness in darkness. Mrs. Henderson's eyes widened with recognition. She'd heard whispers about a girl who'd been sold, and now she knew who the anonymous singer must be. By that evening, the song had spread through local social media like wildfire. Parents shared it with friends, teenagers posted it on their profiles, and local radio stations began playing it during their community spotlight segments. The comments section filled with messages of support and wonder. Who is this girl? Such a powerful story. That voice, it's like an angel crying. The next morning, Lila walked into school, unaware of how her world was about to change. The whispers followed her as usual, but they were different now, admiring instead of cruel. In first period, a girl she'd never spoken to smiled and hummed the melody of "Bought for Love." During third period, the intercom crackled. "Lila Brooks, please report to the principal's office." Her heart sank. Had they discovered she'd borrowed the tablet? Would she be in trouble? The walk to Principal Carter's office felt endless. But when she entered, she found not just the principal, but also Mrs. Henderson and Mr. Roberts, the music teacher. "Lila," Principal Carter said warmly, "we heard your song?" The color drained from her face, but Mrs. Henderson quickly added, "It's extraordinary, dear. Your voice, your words, they're a gift." Mr. Roberts nodded enthusiastically. "We'd like to offer you proper recording equipment, maybe even enter you in the state music competition." Tears welled in Lila's eyes. For so long, she'd hidden her voice, afraid it too would be mocked like everything else about her. Now these adults were looking at her with respect, with recognition of something valuable within her. I don't know what to say," she whispered. "Say yes," Mrs. Henderson smiled. "Your story deserves to be heard." Back at the foster home that afternoon, Lila felt lighter than she had in months. She hurried to her room, eager to practice with the old guitar she'd found in the house's storage room. But when she opened her door, her heart stopped. Tara and Jenny stood there, Lila's guitar between them, or what remained of it. The neck was snapped, strings dangling like broken spider webs. Sheet music lay torn across the floor. "Oops," Jenny smirked. "Guess your little fame trip is over." "Did you really think you could be special?" Tara added, her voice dripping with venom. "You're just the fat girl nobody wanted." Lila fell to her knees, gathering the broken pieces. Each splinter felt like a shard of her dreams, cutting into her palms. The tears came fast and hot, splashing onto the ruined wood. "Please," she whispered, but they were already walking away, laughing. That same afternoon, 60 miles away, Rex Dalton was helping veterans learn woodworking at the rehabilitation center. The radio played softly in the background as he demonstrated how to sand a table leg. Suddenly, a familiar melody filled the room. His hands froze mid-motion. That voice, he knew it instantly. The lyrics spoke of being bought with love, of finding safety in unexpected places. His heart squeezed in his chest as memories flooded back. A rainy night, a terrified girl, a promise of protection. "Can you turn that up?" he asked hoarsely. The radio host was saying, "Another play of the viral hit Bought for Love by an anonymous local artist. The song has captured hearts across 3 counties. Rex set down his tools with trembling hands. I need to make a call. In the center's office, he dialed the radio station. The song you just played, I need to know who wrote it. Sir, we respect our artist's privacy. Please, Rex's voice cracked. Her name is Lila Brooks. I'm the man in her song. A long pause followed. Hold, please. Minutes later, the station manager confirmed what Rex already knew in his heart. The song was indeed by Lila Brooks, a student at Maple Hollow High School. The manager had more questions, but Rex was already heading for his truck. The engine roared to life as Rex pulled onto the highway. His hands gripped the steering wheel tight enough to whiten his knuckles. Rain began to fall, just like that first night, as he whispered, "She found her light." The miles stretched before him as the wipers kept time with his racing heart. Somewhere ahead, a girl with a broken guitar and a wounded soul was singing her truth to the world. And this time, Rex wouldn't let anyone silence her voice. The First Presbyterian Church of Maple Hollow stood peaceful in the autumn sunshine, its white steeple reaching toward clouds that drifted like cotton across the blue sky. Pastor Jim Carter adjusted his collar as he waited by the front steps, checking his watch for the 10th time. The youth music program sign hung from the iron fence, advertising tonight's practice session for young performers. Inside the church, Rex Dalton paced near the stage, his weathered boots making soft sounds on the polished wooden floor. His hands, calloused from years of working with wood and metal, fidgeted with a small wrapped package. A brand new guitar, carefully chosen from the music store 2 towns over. "She'll be here soon," Pastor Jim said, stepping inside. "Are you ready?" Rex nodded, though his throat felt tight. "Been ready since I heard that song, Pastor." "I've heard it too," Pastor Jim smiled warmly. "That girl's got something special in her voice. Pain turned to purpose." The sound of approaching footsteps made them both turn. Through the stained glass windows, they could see a familiar silhouette approaching. Lila, walking slowly, clutching a folder of sheet music to her chest like armor. "Remember," Pastor Jim whispered, "let me speak to her first." Rex retreated to the shadows near the stage as Pastor Jim opened the heavy wooden doors. Lila stood there, looking small and uncertain in an oversized sweater, her dark hair hiding part of her face. "Welcome, Lila." Pastor Jim's voice was gentle. "Thank you for coming to our youth music program meeting." "Thank you for inviting me," she replied softly. "The principal said you might have some recording equipment I could use?" "Indeed, but first, there's someone here who's been hoping to see you." Lila's eyes widened as Rex stepped into the light. For a moment she stood frozen, her sheet music slipping from her grasp and scattering across the floor like fallen leaves. Then, with a cry that seemed to come from somewhere deep and broken, she ran to him. Rex caught her in his arms as she collided with him, her tears soaking into his worn leather jacket. His own eyes burned as he held her, remembering the terrified girl from that rainy night who had flinched at his every movement. Now here she was, clinging to him like a daughter to her father. "I heard your song, kid," he managed, his voice rough with emotion. "Heard every word." "I was so scared you'd be angry," she sobbed, "that you wouldn't want people to know." "Listen to me!" Rex pulled back just enough to look into her eyes. "You were never for sale. Never. What happened that night, I made a choice to protect you, not to own you. You understand? Your voice, your story, they're yours to tell." Pastor Jim watched the reunion with quiet reverence, seeing in it the kind of grace that couldn't be preached from any pulpit. After giving them a moment, he cleared his throat softly. "Lila," he said, "your song has touched many hearts. We're organizing a benefit concert next month for teens who've suffered abuse and neglect. Would you consider being our featured performer?" Lila wiped her eyes, looking uncertain. "But I don't even have a guitar anymore. The girls at the foster home—" "About that," Rex interrupted, reaching for the wrapped package he'd set aside. "Think it's time you had this." With trembling hands, Lila unwrapped the gift. The guitar gleamed in the light streaming through the stained glass, its polished wood the color of honey and hope. "It's beautiful," she whispered, running her fingers along the strings. "It's yours," Rex said firmly. "No strings attached, except those 6 right there." A small laugh escaped her, watery but real. Pastor Jim smiled, seeing the healing happening before his eyes. "Your story, Lila," he said softly. "It's a testament to grace. How love can look like a scary thing at first, but turn out to be exactly what we need. Will you share it with others who might need to hear it?" Lila looked at Rex, then back at the pastor. "Yes," she said, "I will." The rest of the afternoon passed in a blur of preparation. Pastor Jim showed her the sound system, helped her set up on stage. Rex worked quietly in the background, adjusting microphone stands and checking connections, always keeping her in his sight, as if afraid she might disappear again. As evening approached, Lila sat on the edge of the stage, getting familiar with her new guitar. The church was empty except for Rex, who had taken a seat in the back row. The setting sun painted the windows in deep purples and golds, casting rainbow shadows across the floor. She began to play, her voice rising clear and true in the sacred space. It was her song, Bought for Love, but different now, stronger, no longer a cry in the dark, but a light for others to follow. Rex leaned forward in his seat, tears rolling unashamedly down his weathered cheeks. In her voice, he heard echoes of his own daughter, but also something entirely new, the sound of wings unfurling, of chains falling away. "You're free, kid," he whispered, his words carried away by the music. "You're free." The last note hung in the air like a prayer, like a promise. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges: foster home politics, school whispers, the upcoming benefit concert. But for now, in this moment, Grace had found its voice in an unlikely place, between an ex-biker and a girl who'd learned that sometimes love comes disguised as rescue, and freedom can sound like a song. The community center buzzed with anticipation as people filed into rows of folding chairs. Local news crews adjusted their cameras, while volunteers hung sparkly banners proclaiming Hope Sings Youth Benefit Concert. The evening air hummed with whispered conversations and the rustle of program papers. Backstage, Lila's hands trembled as she tuned her guitar. She wore a simple blue dress that made her eyes shine, and her mother's locket gleamed at her throat. Rex stood nearby, his usual leather jacket traded for a clean button-down shirt, though his tattoos still peeked from beneath the cuffs. "You're gonna do great, kid," he said softly, noticing her nervousness. "Just sing it like you do at practice." "What if I mess up?" Her voice quavered. "There are so many people." "Then you'll keep going," Rex replied, his weathered face gentle. "That's what brave people do." Through the curtain, they could see Sheriff Dwyer taking a seat near the back, his expression unreadable. Local reporters scribbled in notepads, and familiar faces from town filled the chairs. Teachers, shop owners, even some of Lila's classmates. Pastor Jim approached them, clipboard in hand. "We're ready when you are, Lila. You'll be our closing act." The first hour passed in a blur of performances. Local bands, poetry readings, testimonials from other teens. Lila paced backstage, clutching her guitar like a shield. Rex watched her with quiet pride, remembering another young girl who used to get stage fright before school concerts. Finally, Pastor Jim stepped up to the microphone. "And now, the voice that brought us all here tonight. Please welcome Lila Brooks." The spotlight felt hot on her face as Lila walked to center stage. Her heart thundered in her chest as she adjusted the microphone. The audience sat in expectant silence. "This song," she began, her voice barely above a whisper, "is dedicated to a man who saved me when I didn't think I was worth saving." Her eyes found Rex in the wings, and she drew strength from his presence. Sometimes angels wear leather instead of wings. The first notes rang out clear and true. As she sang about dark nights and unexpected grace, about being bought with love instead of money, the audience leaned forward in their seats. Even Sheriff Dwyer's stern expression softened. But halfway through the second verse, the back doors burst open with a bang that made everyone jump. Earl Brooks stumbled in, his face flushed with anger and alcohol. "That's my daughter," he shouted, pointing an accusing finger at Lila. "She's up there telling lies about me." Lila's fingers froze on the strings. The music died in her throat as she stared at her father, terror rooting her to the spot. "Making money off these lies," Earl continued, pushing past people trying to stop him. "Acting like some victim when I put food on our table for years." Rex moved from the wings, positioning himself between Earl and the stage. "That's enough, Earl. You're drunk. Leave her be." Earl's bloodshot eyes fixed on Rex with pure hatred. You turned my own daughter against me, stole her and filled her head with garbage." Pastor Jim tried to intervene. "Mr. Brooks, please. This is a charity event. Let's talk outside." "No." Earl shoved past him, heading for the stage. "You want to know the truth? This man's a criminal, ex-con who bought my daughter, and now he's getting rich off her singing." Security guards finally reached Earl, but not before he knocked over a microphone stand with a screech of feedback. The audience watched in horror as he fought against the men trying to remove him. "This isn't over," he yelled as they dragged him toward the exit. "You hear me, Dalton? This isn't over." Rex followed them outside, determined to end this before it got worse. In the parking lot's harsh fluorescent light, Earl broke free from the security guards. "You proud of yourself?" Earl sneered, squaring up to Rex. "Playing daddy to my girl?" "She deserved better than what you gave her," Rex said quietly. "Still does." "You self-righteous piece of—" Earl lunged forward, shoving Rex hard. "You think you're better than me?" Rex didn't push back. "This isn't about better or worse, Earl. It's about doing right by that girl." "Right by her?" Earl's face contorted. "Like you did right by your own kid?" "Yeah, I heard about that. Your junkie daughter who OD'd because her daddy was too busy running with bikers to notice." Something in Rex's eyes flickered, but he kept his hands at his sides. "Don't." Earl grinned nastily, seeing he'd struck a nerve. "Truth hurts, don't it? Maybe if you'd been a better father, she'd still be—" The punch came fast and ugly, Earl's fist connecting with Rex's jaw. Rex stumbled back, tasting blood. Earl followed up with another wild swing that Rex blocked, but then security and onlookers surged forward, trying to separate them. In the chaos, Rex's crucifix necklace, the one he'd worn since finding faith after his daughter's death, tore free from his neck. It fell to the asphalt with a tiny metallic ping that was lost in the shouting. Police sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. Earl immediately changed his demeanor, holding his hands up in mock surrender as the first patrol car pulled in. "He attacked me," Earl called out, pointing at Rex. "Everyone saw it, ex-con showing his true colors." "That's not what happened," someone in the crowd protested. "Earl threw the first punch." But Earl was already spinning his story to the responding officers, playing up his stumbling into victimhood. "I was just trying to protect my daughter, and this man assaulted me." Sheriff Dwyer emerged from the building, taking in the scene with narrow eyes. Despite witnesses trying to explain what really happened, He focused on Rex's bloodied lip and Earl's accusations. "Cuff him," Dwyer ordered his deputies, nodding toward Rex. "No." Lila's scream cut through the night as she ran from the building. "Please, you can't! He didn't do anything wrong!" She reached Rex just as the deputies were securing the handcuffs. Her eyes fell on his crucifix lying in the parking lot, and she snatched it up, clutching it to her chest. "Sheriff, please," she begged. "My father's lying. Rex was protecting me." But Dwyer's face remained impassive as his deputies led Rex toward a patrol car. Red and blue lights painted everything in alternating shadows, reflecting off the tears streaming down Lila's face. "It's okay, kid," Rex called back to her, his voice steady despite everything. "Truth has a way of coming out." The patrol car's door slammed shut. Lila stood frozen in the parking lot, holding Rex's crucifix so tight the edges bit into her palm. Each pulse of the emergency lights caught the tears on her cheeks, transforming them into drops of blood red and ocean blue that fell unnoticed to the ground. Earl's triumphant smirk was the last thing she saw before the patrol car pulled away, carrying Rex into the darkness that had once again invaded their fragile peace. The morning sunlight filtering through the foster home's dusty windows felt cold and harsh. Lila lay curled on her narrow bed, Rex's crucifix still clutched in her hand from the night before. Her phone buzzed with another news alert, making her stomach clench. She didn't want to look, but forced herself to read the headline. "Ex-Hell's Angel arrested after violent confrontation. Questions arise about teen safety." The words blurred as tears filled her eyes. Below was a photo of Rex being led away in handcuffs, his face bloodied from Earl's punch. The article painted him as a dangerous criminal who had purchased a minor under suspicious circumstances. Nothing about Earl's drinking, the abuse, or how Rex had saved her. Down the hall, she heard the other foster kids stirring. Their voices drifted through the thin walls as they got ready for school. Lila pulled the blanket over her head, trying to block out their whispers. "Did you hear about that biker guy?" one girl said. "Total creep. Probably just wanted her for—" "Shut up," another voice cut in. "She might hear you." "So what if she does? It's true. Nobody just buys a kid to help them." Lila pressed her hands over her ears, but the cruel words still seeped through. Her chest felt tight, like she couldn't get enough air. She'd thought the benefit concert would change things, show people who Rex really was. Instead, it had made everything worse. Mrs. Henderson, the foster mother, knocked on her door. "Lila, you need to get ready for school." "I'm sick," Lila called back, her voice cracking. "Please, I can't go today." A pause, then a sigh. "All right, one day. But you're going tomorrow, no excuses." Footsteps retreated down the hall. Lila rolled onto her back, staring at the water-stained ceiling. The weight of guilt pressed down on her like a physical thing. Rex was in jail because of her, because he'd tried to protect her, again. She pulled out her phone, searching for more news. The local station's website had a video clip from last night. She forced herself to watch, wincing at Earl's dramatic performance for the cameras. "I was just trying to stop him from exploiting my daughter," Earl said, managing to look both concerned and injured. "He got violent when I confronted him about it. Shows his true colors, doesn't it?" The reporter's voiceover mentioned Rex's troubled past and connections to motorcycle gangs. Not one word about how Earl had sold his own daughter, or how Rex had given her safety when no one else would. Lila's hands shook as she closed the video. She could picture Rex in a jail cell, alone with his thoughts. Was he regretting ever helping her? No. She knew better. He'd said truth had a way of coming out, but truth needed a voice. The house grew quiet as the other kids left for school. Lila lay in bed, turning Rex's crucifix over and over in her hands. The metal had warmed from her touch, smooth except for the tiny scratches that showed its age. How many prayers had Rex whispered over this cross? Around noon, she heard Mrs. Henderson leave to run errands. Finally alone, Lila slid to her knees beside the bed. The position felt awkward. She hadn't prayed since her mother died. But something in her needed this. "God," she whispered, her voice trembling, "I don't know if you're listening, but Rex believed in you. He believed in me when nobody else did. He saved me when I thought I was worthless. Please, if he could save me, help me save him." The words hung in the silent room. Lila waited, as if expecting some dramatic sign. Instead, a simple clarity settled over her. She knew what she had to do. Her hands steadier now, she picked up her phone and searched for the youth center's number. Pastor Jim had been kind during the benefit concert. Maybe he would help. The phone rang 3 times before his warm voice answered. "Youth Center, Pastor Jim speaking." "Pastor?" Lila's voice came out smaller than she'd intended. "This is Lila Brooks, from the concert last night." "Lila, yes, of course. How are you holding up?" The genuine concern in his voice made her throat tight. "Not good, but I want to fix it. I need to tell people the truth about Rex, about everything." "I've been praying about this situation," Pastor Jim said quietly. "What did you have in mind?" "The local news. They're telling it all wrong. Could you help me get an interview? On TV?" The words tumbled out faster now. "People need to know who Rex really is, what my father did, all of it." A thoughtful pause. "That's very brave of you, Lila. But are you sure? Going public means everyone will know your story." "They already think they know it," Lila said, surprising herself with the strength in her voice. "But they're wrong. Rex didn't buy me. He freed me. That's what they need to hear." "All right," Pastor Jim said. "I know a producer at Channel 8 News. Let me make some calls." After they hung up, Lila went to the bathroom and stood before the spotted mirror. The girl staring back looked scared, but determined. Her mother's locket hung beside Rex's crucifix around her neck, symbols of the only 2 people who had truly loved her. "He didn't buy me," she practiced, watching her reflection. The words came out shaky. She took a deep breath and tried again. "He didn't buy me. He freed me." Again and again she repeated it, until her voice grew stronger. Until she could say it without trembling. Until she believed not just the words, but her right to speak them. In the mirror, her reflection straightened its shoulders. The scared girl was still there, but something else shone through now, something that looked a lot like courage. "He freed me," she whispered one last time. "And now I'm going to free him." The bright studio lights made Lila's palms sweat as she sat across from news anchor Sarah Chen. The red on-air light blinked to life, and Sarah's professional smile softened into something more genuine. "Tonight, we have a special guest, 16-year-old Lila Brooks, whose story has captured local attention after a dramatic incident at a youth charity event. Lila, thank you for being here." Lila's fingers found her mother's locket, drawing strength from its familiar shape. "Thank you for letting me tell the truth. In your own words, what happened that night your father claims you were kidnapped?" Taking a deep breath, Lila met the camera's unblinking eye. "My father didn't just give me away. He sold me. He was drunk, angry about losing his job. He dragged me outside in the rain and took money from Rex Dalton. But Rex..." Her voice grew stronger. "Rex wasn't buying a person. He was saving one." Sarah leaned forward. "What do you mean?" "My father had been hurting me for years, not with his fists, with his words, telling me I was worthless, ugly, that no one would ever want me. Tears threatened, but Lila pushed through. That night, I thought he might sell me to someone terrible, but Rex, he gave me a safe place, showed me kindness, treated me like I mattered. As Lila shared details of those few precious days at the cabin, the quiet breakfasts, the guitar on the porch, Rex's gentle encouragement, the studio grew still. Even the cameraman wiped his eyes. "Why come forward now?" Sarah asked softly. "Because Rex is sitting in jail for trying to protect me. Because my father's lies shouldn't win." Lila's voice cracked. "Rex taught me that sometimes love looks like rescue. He didn't buy me, he freed me." Within hours, social media exploded. The hashtag #TwicerBought2BeFree started trending, first locally, then nationally. Viewers shared their own stories of abuse and rescue, of unlikely angels in leather jackets. In his cell, Rex sat on the thin mattress, listening as guards turned up the volume on the break room television. Lila's voice filled the concrete space. "He saw something in me that I couldn't see in myself. Worth." Silent tears rolled down Rex's weathered cheeks. One guard pretended not to notice, sliding him an extra blanket. Meanwhile, local reporters began digging into Earl Brooks's past. They uncovered a string of DUIs, workplace violations, and domestic disturbance calls that had been swept under the rug. Former co-workers spoke about his volatile temper, his drinking, the way he'd blame everyone else for his failures. Pastor Jim visited abuse shelters with donation checks, amazed at the outpouring of support. "People want to help," he told the shelter director. Lila's story reminded them that evil thrives in silence, but so does grace. Earl Brooks watched his carefully constructed world crumble from a cheap motel room outside of town. His phone buzzed constantly with reporters' calls and angry messages. When security camera footage emerged of him dragging Lila through the rain that night, he threw a bottle at the wall and fled, leaving a half-empty room and unpaid bill behind. 3 days after the interview aired, Pastor Jim walked into the county jail, his steps echoing on the concrete floor. He found Rex sitting quietly in his cell, a worn Bible open on his lap. "You've got the world on your side now," Pastor Jim said softly, watching hope dawn in the ex-biker's tired eyes. Rex touched the empty space where his crucifix usually hung, knowing Lila had it now. "Not the world," he replied. "Just the truth." Finally. The county jail's metal doors creaked open on a bright Thursday morning. Rex stepped into the sunlight, blinking as his eyes adjusted. Sheriff Dwyer stood beside him, his usual stern expression replaced by something softer, more humbled. "Mr. Dalton," the sheriff said quietly, leading Rex to a private corner of the parking lot. "I need to say something." He removed his hat, turning it in his hands. "This town, myself included, we judged you by your past. We saw the tattoos, heard about the Hells Angels, and made up our minds without looking deeper." Rex nodded silently, his weathered face showing no bitterness. "Your actions with Lila," Sheriff Dwyer continued. "They showed more law and justice than my badge did that day. I'm sorry." Before Rex could respond, a familiar voice called out across the parking lot. "Rex!" Lila ran toward him, her face glowing with joy. She crashed into his arms, nearly knocking him backward. Her tears dampened his shirt as she hugged him fiercely. "Easy there, kid," Rex chuckled softly, his own eyes glistening. "I'm getting too old for tackle hugs." Lila pulled back, wiping her eyes with her sleeve. She clutched a thick envelope in her hands. "Look." She thrust the papers toward him. "The Hamilton Music Foundation. They want to sponsor my education. Full scholarship plus mentoring." Rex's face broke into a proud smile as he scanned the contract. "Well, would you look at that?" He ruffled her hair gently. Guess I'll need to get better at autograph lines." Later that afternoon, they drove to the cemetery in Rex's old pickup truck. The late summer breeze rustled through the maple trees as they walked between the headstones, carrying fresh flowers. They stopped first at the grave of Rex's daughter, Sarah, then moved to where Lila's mother rested nearby. Rex knelt between the graves, laying roses on each. His voice was rough with emotion as he spoke. "Thank you both," he whispered, "for bringing two broken souls together, for showing us that family isn't always blood." Lila squeezed his shoulder, understanding the depth of his words. As they drove home, sunlight broke through the clouds in golden rays. Lila rolled down her window, letting the warm air sweep through her hair. A melody rose in her throat. Soft at first, then stronger. It was her new song about forgiveness, about how healing could spring from the deepest wounds. Rex listened silently, his hands steady on the wheel as the road carried them toward home. The autumn breeze carried the scent of pine needles and hope across the transformed grounds of what was now known as Hellfire Haven. Where silence once ruled, guitar chords and young voices drifted through open windows. The old cabin had grown, with a new wing added for music rooms and counseling spaces, but Rex had kept the heart of it the same: warm, welcoming, and safe. In the flourishing garden, roses and wildflowers bloomed alongside neat rows of vegetables. Wooden benches dotted the paths, each carved with messages of encouragement by the teens who found refuge here. Lila, now more confident in her skin, sat with a young girl on one such bench, helping her write lyrics in a worn notebook. "Sometimes the hardest stories make the most beautiful songs," Lila explained softly, her mother's locket catching the afternoon light. "That's what Rex taught me." Inside, guitars of various sizes hung on the walls like artwork. Each had a story, some donated, others rescued from pawn shops. Rex believed every instrument carried healing in its strings. The main room, once sparse and lonely, now held comfortable chairs arranged in circles for group sessions. A documentary crew from Channel 7 moved quietly through the space, capturing moments of transformation. Their camera followed Rex as he taught a teenage boy basic chords, his patience evident in every gentle correction. The journalist, Sarah Chen, watched with obvious emotion as former gang members worked alongside church volunteers in the Ayo kitchen. "This place," she said into her microphone, "started with one man's act of mercy and one girl's courage to sing her truth." As evening approached, Rex and Lila walked together up the hill to the wooden cross he'd built. The camera followed at a respectful distance, recording their easy companionship. The cross, now weathered but strong, stood as a testament to second chances. "What do you see when you look out there now?" Sarah asked them. Lila smiled, her eyes scanning the valley below. "I see hope growing wild," she answered, "like flowers through concrete." As dusk painted the sky in soft purples, everyone gathered on the hill. Lila took out her guitar, the same one Rex had first found her playing. Her voice, stronger now but still gentle, carried across the evening air as she sang her newest song about mercy, rising from life's deepest wounds. The final lines hung in the air. "You didn't buy me. You found me." The truth of it shone in both their eyes as Rex and Lila shared a warm embrace. Church bells rang out from town below, their clear tones mixing with the night breeze. Above them, the cross's neon outline began to glow against the darkening sky. Lila's laugh, free and full of joy, danced with the wind, a living proof that love could heal what hatred had tried to break. Thank you for listening. Stories connect us in the most unexpected ways. If you felt that spark today, make sure you're subscribed. I share a new one daily, and the next might change your day.